What if the true battleground is not where anyone expects? If the most decisive phase of the war in Ukraine is not unfolding in the ruined streets of Pokrovsk or the bombed-out neighborhoods of Kharkiv, but in invisible networks, hidden logistics, and the everyday lives of millions? Headlines focus on savage firefights and sudden attacks, but these are just the visible tip of a much larger and infinitely more dangerous struggle taking place out of sight. Let us step into Pokrovsk, a city whose name once meant little outside its region. In the early days of the war, Pokrovsk was a waypoint, a logistical dot on the map overshadowed by bigger cities. Today, it is a crucible. Russian forces have poured into its southern districts, driving Ukrainian defenders back street by street, house by house. The process is not a lightning thrust, but a slow burn, a furnace that consumes defenses and morale alike. Consider the reality inside those streets. An apartment block that was a family home yesterday becomes a strongpoint today and a ruin tomorrow. Ukrainian troops, exhausted and battered, fall back, forced to abandon each position only after fierce resistance. The pattern echoes the infamous urban battles of World War II. Think of Stalingrad, where every staircase, every room, was fought over with a ferocity that turned the city into a graveyard of ambition. Like then, there is no single moment of collapse. Only the slow, grinding tilt as momentum shifts meter by meter. Kharkiv tells a parallel tale, but with a new, chilling twist. Once Ukraine's second-largest city, a vibrant hub of innovation and culture, Kharkiv has been plunged into darkness, both literally and metaphorically. Russian missile and drone strikes target not just military sites, but the infrastructure that keeps the city alive. Power plants, substations, water treatment facilities. The effect ripples far beyond the front line. When the lights die, so too does the city's heartbeat. Commerce stutters. Hospitals ration power. The hum of normal life fades to a whisper as people huddle in cold apartments, disconnected from the world. The horror of Kharkiv's blackouts is not unique. Across Ukraine, from Odessa's battered port terminals to Chernihiv's burning logistics hubs, a calculated campaign is underway. Russian strategy has shifted from the pursuit of quick territorial gains to a methodical assault on the very systems that underpin Ukrainian society. Railways, highways, supply depots, everything that moves troops or feeds the economy is a target. This is not a new idea. History is replete with examples. During the Second World War, the Allied bombing of German industry sought to break the Nazi war machine by destroying its capacity to produce, move, and sustain. The difference here is the scale and precision. Modern technology, from satellite-guided munitions to swarms of drones, allows for unprecedented accuracy and devastation. Why has the war changed so dramatically? Why do we now see fewer sweeping offensives and feel the weight of every lost transformer, every seized railway bridge? The roots lie in the exhaustion of both sides, and, crucially, in Russia's strategic pivot. Unable to deliver a knockout blow on the battlefield, Moscow now seeks to grind down Ukraine's ability to fight, to move, and to function as a modern nation. The aim is not just military victory, but the slow suffocation of resistance through deprivation and exhaustion. Across the front, this approach is bearing fruit in ways that rarely make headlines. In Leontovich, Novotoretskaya, and Vladimirovka, Russian forces have steadily widened their grip. Unlike the dramatic tank battles of the past, these advances are measured in the slow, steady expansion of control. One block, one trench, one ruined village at a time. In the northern Donbass, a region that has changed hands countless times since 2014, Ukrainian defenders are slipping back, sometimes almost imperceptibly. The cost is high, and neither side can claim overwhelming advantage, but the direction is clear. Ukraine's lines are being worn down, one costly meter at a time. The exhaustion is visible on the faces of Ukrainian troops and in the stories from the front. New battalions, rushed in to shore up battered defenses, often find themselves retreating within days, unable to withstand the relentless tempo of Russian assaults. Reinforcements now include not just Ukrainian reservists, but foreign fighters, special forces veterans from NATO countries, seasoned mercenaries from South America. Their presence speaks volumes. Ukraine is tapping every available resource, yet still struggles to stabilize the front. Internal friction gnaws at unit cohesion. Reports of discipline problems and plummeting morale are increasingly common, a pattern seen in many wars of attrition, from the trenches of Verdun to the frozen wastes of Korea. Technology has become both a savior and a tormentor. Drones dominate the skies, hunting vehicles, disrupting supply lines, and striking ammunition depots. Artillery barrages, once the preserve of great power wars, have returned with a vengeance. In the air, drone pilots wage a ceaseless campaign, their machines darting through the sky to deliver deadly payloads or relay vital intelligence. On the ground, artillery thunders day and night, pinning down troops and smashing through urban defenses. The psychological toll is immense. Soldiers must live under constant threat, never knowing when the next shell will land or the next drone will appear overhead. This is not an age of dramatic reversals. The headlines no longer blare news of sweeping counteroffensives. Instead, they chronicle an unending, grinding struggle. Russian assault teams, operating with increasing discipline, exploit every minor advantage in terrain or logistics. Over weeks and months, they nibble at the front, turning once sturdy Ukrainian strongholds into ruins. The will to resist, so vital in the early days of the war, is eroded by each new setback, each night spent shivering without power or news from loved ones. To overlook the pattern in these incremental, unspectacular advances is to miss the war's deeper transformation. The tempo has changed. Decisive shifts now unfold slowly, almost invisibly, as pressure accumulates on all sides. The stakes are rising, quietly but steadily, not just for soldiers in muddy trenches, but for entire societies and economies behind the lines. Yet the most critical front lines are not those marked on military maps. The true pivot is emerging in the power grids, the logistics hubs, the supply chains that keep a nation alive. Here, the rules of conflict are being rewritten. Modern war is no longer fought only with bullets and bombs, but with switches and wires, with the everyday systems that enable life itself. Imagine the shock when an entire city's lights do not just flicker, but vanish in an instant. This is the new question facing millions of Ukrainians. War has spilled far beyond the front lines, transforming into a relentless contest for the very systems that keep society functioning. When power grids fail, so do economies and hope. Russia's campaign is cold, methodical, and devastating. By targeting Ukraine's critical infrastructure, Moscow seeks to choke off the energy, transport, and communications lifelines that sustain resistance. This approach is not unique to Russia. Throughout history, armies have targeted infrastructure to break the enemy's will. During the American Civil War, General Sherman's march to the sea left a swath of destruction across Georgia, crippling Confederate logistics and morale. In World War II, the Allied bombing of German railways and oil refineries contributed as much to victory as any battle. Today, however, the tools are more precise, and the consequences more immediate. In Kharkiv, the impact is unmistakable. Repeated barrages have battered the city's power grid. Entire districts are plunged into darkness, streetlights dead, communications silenced, trolley lines frozen in place. With each new strike, another piece of daily life collapses. The city breathes in blackouts, adjusting to survival with every hour. Food spoils. Water becomes scarce. People queue in the cold for hours, waiting for a chance to charge a phone or fill a bucket. Odessa, Ukraine's vital Black Sea port, has not been spared. Precision missile strikes have shattered port terminals and vital supply routes. The city, once a bustling hub of trade and culture, now moves in fits and starts, its economy crippled by constant threat. In Chernihiv, logistics hubs and ammunition depots erupt in fire, sending shockwaves through the supply chain. Even cities far from the front lines feel the consequences. Empty shelves, shuttered businesses, a creeping sense of isolation. The human cost is devastating. Homes lose power for days or weeks. Families huddle around candles, cut off from the world by dead networks. Schools fall silent, children forced to study by flashlight or not at all. Hospitals strain to keep generators running, rationing every watt to save lives. The fabric of city life unravels, replaced by anxiety, fear, and cold. These attacks are not just about winning a war on the battlefield. They are about eroding the will and resilience of an entire society. When power grids fail, so do economies, and hope. The strategy is as psychological as it is physical. Break the spirit, not just the sword. Every blackout chips away at confidence. Every night of silence tests the boundaries of what people can bear. History offers ample warning. In the siege of Leningrad during World War II, more than 1 million civilians endured starvation, cold, and relentless bombardment. The city survived, but at a terrible cost. In Sarajevo, under siege for nearly 4 years in the 1990s, the breakdown of infrastructure and constant shelling eroded morale and hope. Societies that cannot adapt to sustained pressure risk collapse from within, long before their armies are defeated. The true battles are no longer fought with tanks, but with the gears and wires of everyday life. The stakes could not be higher. Ukraine's survival now depends not just on its soldiers, but on the endurance of its people. If the nation can withstand this assault, if it can keep its lights on, its trains running, its hospitals open, it will defend not only its territory, but its very identity and future. As pressure on Ukraine's infrastructure mounts, a new front opens, one that tests not only resources, but the will and cohesion of an entire nation. Mobilization, morale, and the question of endurance now take center stage. How do you continue fighting when the hum of your factories fades, your currency evaporates overnight, and the ordinary rhythms of life are shattered? In today's Ukraine, combat has spilled far beyond trenches and missiles. Both sides are now locked in a multidimensional conflict waged across economic, legal, and technological frontiers that threaten to redraw the global map. Moscow has launched a new kind of offensive, one fought not with tanks or drones, but with contracts and laws. In response to the West freezing hundreds of billions of dollars in Russian assets, the Kremlin has empowered authorities to seize the holdings of Western firms still operating inside the country. This is not an idle threat. Major multinationals, household names in banking, energy, and manufacturing, have already seen their assets nationalized. Each new seizure sends a chilling message. No one is safe, not even the giants who thought they could weather any storm. Despite the risk, many Western companies remain in Russia, caught between the threat of expropriation and the hope of a negotiated exit. For some, the cost of leaving is simply too high. Billions in sunk investments, irreplaceable infrastructure, thousands of local employees. The Kremlin's new policy allows it to pick its targets, forcing some firms to sell at staggering losses or simply absorb the blow. The rules of commerce are being rewritten in real time, with consequences that will echo for years across global markets. Meanwhile, the war in the air is intensifying. Ukraine has unleashed unprecedented waves of drone attacks, reaching further and striking deeper than ever before. Russian air defenses, designed to stop traditional aircraft and missiles, are stretched to their limits by the sheer volume and unpredictability of drone swarms. In one recent week, more than 100 drones were reported shot down over Russian territory, a scale of attack unseen in previous conflicts. Each successful strike exposes weaknesses, forcing Russia to adapt and invest in new countermeasures. This drone war is reshaping military doctrine. Armies around the world are studying the conflict, drawing lessons about the vulnerabilities of modern societies. The realization is sobering. No city, no infrastructure, is truly safe from technological disruption. A single drone, guided by GPS and carrying a few kilograms of explosives, can destroy a transformer, ignite a fuel depot, or cripple a railway hub. The cost is low, the impact high. Inside Ukraine, the pressure is reaching a breaking point. Kyiv has issued a sweeping mobilization order, extending the draft to every man between the ages of 25 and 60. Young men now face severe travel restrictions, fueling rumors of mass conscription and spreading anxiety through every town and village. The sense of crisis grows sharper by the week as families are torn apart and the fabric of society begins to fray. The war now saturates every aspect of daily life. The divide between civilian and military targets blurs with each passing day. The economy is battered, not just by physical destruction, but by the uncertainty that war brings. Courts are clogged with disputes over property, conscription, and wartime regulations. The flow of information is a battleground unto itself, with propaganda and misinformation spreading as quickly as facts. The longer this grinding war of attrition drags on, the greater the danger of economic collapse and social upheaval. These wounds will not heal quickly. They will shape Ukraine, Russia, and the wider region for generations, leaving scars that may never fully fade, regardless of who claims battlefield victory. But as the front lines shift, so too do the strategies and risks. Both sides are seeking new ways to outmaneuver each other, beyond the battlefield, into the realms of economics, law, and information. What does it truly mean to be resilient when everything, money, warmth, and even the smallest comforts, hang in the balance? In a war of attrition like this, the test is not just for soldiers, but for entire nations. Morale, logistics, and adaptability become the real battlegrounds. When the power grid fails for weeks, when cash becomes useless, and even candles grow scarce, resilience is no longer a slogan. It is the line between survival and collapse. For individuals, this is a brutal wake-up call. How ready are you for a world where the ordinary breaks down? True resilience starts with a plan, some basic supplies, and above all, the mental readiness to adapt when life is upended. It is not just about hoarding supplies. It is about learning fast, improvising when plans fall apart, and keeping your mind clear while confusion and propaganda swirl all around. In this chaos, information literacy becomes as vital as food or shelter. In the fog of war, where facts are twisted and lies travel fast, the ability to separate truth from noise is a shield. It keeps you safer, calmer, and less likely to be swept up in panic or disinformation. Communities that share reliable information and support one another can withstand crises that would shatter isolated individuals. For entire societies, the lesson cuts even deeper. Physical infrastructure, energy, transport, communications must be hardened, but so must the bonds between people. Societies that nurture trust, cooperation, and shared purpose are quicker to recover. The real toll of attritional warfare rarely makes headlines. It is found in the slow bleed of morale and the growing mistrust between citizens and leaders. Societies that stay strong and flexible can absorb shocks, rebuild, and even find new ways to thrive under pressure. Understanding these strategies is not just theory, it is survival, whether you are a worker, a business owner, or a national leader. Seeing how economic and logistical warfare operates lets you anticipate disruptions, spot weak points, and make smarter choices, both for today and for whatever comes next. Wars are no longer just fought on battlefields far away. They shape economies, politics, and daily life everywhere. Over the long haul, it is not the side that strikes first or hardest that wins. It is the side that can take the pain, adapt to new realities, and hold steady under constant pressure. That is the real currency of modern conflict: resilience, recovery, and the relentless ability to keep moving forward, day after day. To ignore these lessons is to risk being caught unprepared, not just for war, but for any crisis that tests our systems and spirit. Whether you lead or simply try to get by, failing to adapt can cost more than you ever imagined. But Ukraine's struggle is not only about resilience, it is about the mounting pressures threatening to break that resilience. The next phase will reveal just how much strain a society can endure before it snaps. The next turning point will not be heralded with fanfare. It will gather momentum in silence, built brick by brick in the shadows, woven through infrastructure, cunning, and unyielding resolve. Beyond the news tickers and shifting front lines, something deeper is unfolding. The war is no longer about swift, dramatic advances. Instead, it is about relentless, almost invisible pressure, applied where it hurts most. Russia's approach has shifted. No longer seeking headlines with sudden offensives, it now grinds away at Ukraine's foundations. Every blackout in Kharkiv, each strike on a railway, every power station plunged into darkness. These are not chaotic blows. They are precise, systematic efforts to weaken Ukraine's will and capacity to fight. The aim is clear: make life unlivable, strain the social fabric, and inject exhaustion deep into Ukraine's core. When the lights go out, when supply chains fray, it is not just soldiers who feel the pressure, but families, workers, and leaders alike. Ukraine faces a crucible unlike any before. Under the weight of mounting losses and the relentless demands of its international backers, it is forced to mobilize as never before. The cost is measured not only in soldiers or broken machines, but in the heavy strain on every corner of society, from the economy's lifeblood to public morale, from civilian logistics to the pulse of government itself. This is the new face of modern conflict. There is no single front line. Instead, the struggle runs through factories that mend armor, control rooms that juggle energy flows, and the quiet chambers where mobilization decisions are weighed. War has become a contest of systems and endurance, a grinding test of nerves, resources, and the ability to adapt under constant threat. If you focus only on the obvious, you will miss the real story. The fate of tomorrow's world is being decided by those who can see past the noise, by those who understand how infrastructure, morale, and logistics quietly tilt the balance of power. The headlines may fixate on territory lost or regained, but the real battle is for the arteries and nerves of entire nations. The outcome will be decided by who can sustain pressure, rebuild faster, and outlast the storm. That is why the future remains so uncertain, and why the next pivotal moment will come not with a bang, but with a subtle, decisive shift beneath the surface. So pause. Ask yourself, are you watching the obvious, or are you searching for the hidden hands at work? Only those who sense the deeper currents will grasp what is truly at stake, and who might be ready for what comes next. But what practical lessons can we draw from this slow-motion crisis, whether as individuals, communities, or nations? The war in Ukraine offers a grim but necessary education in survival and adaptation. Let us break down what resilience means in the face of such unrelenting, multifaceted attack. First, preparedness is not about panic buying or doomsday prepping. It is about understanding the systems that keep your life running and having realistic contingencies in place. For example, if you rely on electricity for heat, have an alternative, perhaps a wood stove, or a supply of blankets and warm clothing. In besieged Sarajevo, families survived winters by burning furniture and scavenging for fuel. In today's Ukraine, people keep emergency power banks and solar chargers for their phones. Second, information is power. In every major conflict, from London's Blitz in the 1940s to the Syrian civil war, rumors and misinformation have been as dangerous as bombs. Communities that develop trusted networks, neighbors who share news, volunteers who distribute supplies, are more resilient than those that go it alone. In Poland during the Second World War, underground newspapers and clandestine radio broadcasts kept hope alive under occupation. In Ukraine, encrypted messaging apps and citizen journalism play a similar role. Third, adaptability is crucial. The world is full of stories of people who survived against unimaginable odds because they adapted quickly to changing circumstances. In the Icelandic volcano eruption of 2010, air travel across Europe ground to a halt, but governments that quickly arranged alternative transport and communicated clearly minimized the chaos. In Ukraine, cities have learned to reroute supplies around destroyed bridges, to convert metro stations into bomb shelters, to teach children remotely when schools are shut by attacks. On a national scale, resilience means diversifying supply chains, building redundancy into critical infrastructure, and investing in rapid repair capabilities. Israel, for example, has developed a network of protected power and water facilities designed to withstand missile attacks. After the Fukushima disaster in 2011, Japan overhauled its emergency response systems, stockpiling supplies and training citizens in disaster response. For governments, resilience also means maintaining public trust. When leaders are transparent about risks and honest about setbacks, societies are less likely to fracture under pressure. The British government's handling of the Blitz, with nightly radio addresses and public visits to bombed neighborhoods, helped Londoners endure months of bombing. In contrast, the Soviet cover-up of Chernobyl in 1986 sowed mistrust that still lingers decades later. For businesses, the lesson is to understand not just immediate risks, but the cascading effects of disruption. A factory that depends on a single railway line is vulnerable. A company that does not plan for cyber attacks is courting disaster. In Ukraine, businesses have learned to operate in blackout conditions, to move operations underground, to shift production to safer regions when needed. As individuals, we can all cultivate habits of resilience. Keep a small reserve of essentials: food, water, medicine. Know your neighbors, and be willing to help as well as ask for help. Stay informed, but be skeptical of rumors. Practice adaptability. If your usual commute is blocked, have an alternative. If your phone is your lifeline, keep it charged, or know where you can find power in a crisis. Above all, remember that resilience is a collective trait. No one survives alone. In every war, every disaster, it is communities, families, neighborhoods, networks of friends that pull together and carry each other through. The story of Ukraine is not just one of suffering, but of extraordinary solidarity. Volunteers rescuing the elderly, teachers finding ways to reach students, neighbors sharing what little they have. The war in Ukraine is a harbinger of the challenges the 21st century may bring to us all. Wars fought as much in cyberspace and supply chains as on battlefields. Societies tested by the loss of comfort, certainty, and routine. Whether the crisis is war, pandemic, or natural disaster, the core lessons remain the same. Prepare, adapt, trust, and support one another. So as the world watches Ukraine, let us not merely sympathize with its suffering, but learn from its example. The true currency of survival is not strength alone, but the ability to endure, to adapt, and to rebuild, again and again. In the end, the fate of nations is decided not just by armies or leaders, but by the quiet, steadfast resilience of ordinary people. That is the lesson Ukraine teaches us all, and the question we must answer for ourselves. When the crisis comes, what will you do to keep the lights on, both in your home and in your heart? And as the war enters its most perilous phase, where darkness and uncertainty are weapons as deadly as bullets, remember, the real battle may be happening where no one is looking. Stay vigilant, stay resilient, and above all, never underestimate the power of endurance when everything else seems lost.